When the agent says the price is not right, often it's complete silence, and it is the most awkward conversation in real estate. We're going to unpack it this morning. Stay tuned. Good morning.
Wowsy. Good morning. How are we?
Big topic this morning. Good. Yourself?
Good. Good. Really good. Ready for a massive day. This is probably one of the trickiest conversations as real estate agents we need to have with vendors when the price is not right. Because, naturally every vendor wants the most amount of money for their property. And guess what? Every real estate agent wants the same. We're chosen, we are nominated by a vendor to achieve the absolute highest possible price in the marketplace. But here's the reality, Billy. When a property isn't selling, everyone starts blaming everything else. The photos, the marketing, it's the bullet points, it's the weather, it's the time of the open home, it's the interest rates. But the reality is most of the time, the answer is much simpler. It's the price.
Yeah, like fingers being pointed everywhere. This. I mean, even the finger gets pointed at the agent. The agent's the problem. We see that as well. Price is usually the market speaking, more than anyone else. And being at the front, showing the property to the market, the agent, it's their duty to make sure they're reporting that to the owner.
Absolutely. There's a wonderful thing that I do with a vendor. Actually, I had a vendor meeting over the weekend, and just to sit and report all the findings of the market. And I do actually have interest in this property, but the vendor feels their property is worth a whole lot more than what the market is telling us. And we have a obligation to let our vendors know exactly what the market is saying about their property, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. And I sat down with my vendor and I said, look, here is factually what the other buyers are looking at. Here is factually what the buyers are saying. And I actually had that very difficult heart-to-heart conversation with my vendors, but I wanted them to understand the absolute truth about where things are at. It's not the first time the property's been on the market. And I had said to them, again, quite honestly, the price that you are after is there in 5 years' time. And here's why. And I actually showed them the data. The area that their property is in actually has had a really, really good boom the last 5 years. And it's highly unlikely from what the data shows us that it's going to go through that again. Now, what they choose then to do with the information that we've given them, that's entirely up to a vendor. But our job is not only to achieve the absolute highest possible price in the market, it's also to report the facts.
That's right. The market doesn't punish you at the end after 6 weeks, 8 weeks on the market. It will give you the feedback early. And right now, to give you an idea of what we're seeing locally on the local Sydney Northern Beaches at our open homes, it's the first 2 weeks that are critical to establishing where the buyers see value. Regardless of where the owner's dream price is, it's about establishing where the market sees value, and from there you can then extract premium, and hopefully that aligns with what the owner's looking for.
I agree, but here's the thing, Billy, is that overpriced homes actually don't attract competition.
That's right.
So that's the real that is the real problem with overpricing. So how many times have we signed up a listing and a vendor said, we're not going to guide there, and don't get me wrong, there's no underquoting here, but the guide is a critical part of a campaign, because naturally buyers are going to add on 10% before they've even walked through the front door. And if a vendor's saying, I want $5 million, guiding at 5.5 million is not going to get them to where they need to get to. So, it's not creating any competition. But when the price is right, the buyers will compete. And when the price is wrong, the buyers would disappear.
Yeah,
Right. But the
correct.
doesn't that silence just tell the story? Again, I had brought on a listing. It had been on the market with a couple of other agents, and my vendors were saying, we're not selling unless we get this price. And I said, let's not even focus on that right at this moment, because we've had 2 open homes and no one coming through the door. So the most important thing at the moment that we need to focus on is getting that foot traffic, getting the buyers actually coming in the door. That is the most important thing. Billy, let's talk about a vendor that says, that's okay, I'll just wait until, we're not in a hurry, and I'm just going to wait until I get the wrong price, until I get the right price, I should say. Tell me about a property that just sits on the market for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, often that conversation starts, and it's a very common behavioral trait. They're referencing a key sale on the street that might have happened years ago, or something that they feel super passionate about, a renovation they've done. There's often something there that starts that conversation, but you've got to bring it back into localized, real-time feedback from the market. Respectfully, the market's not talking about that sale or the renovation. So once the property starts to sit on the market, it then it's like a loaf of bread. It becomes a bit stale, and the campaign can become stagnant. And so it can go so bad that you start to then have no groups coming through the open home. Without anyone coming through the front door, it's impossible. You've got a 0% chance of selling. So
That's right.
tend
Yeah,
to
I agree.
rebuild it.
And and the brutal truth is that, as you said, Billy, the longer a property sits on the market, it starts to look like stale bread on a shelf. It really does. You've got a couple of weeks there of the campaign where the vast majority of the activity is happening. And so, unfortunately, the vendor that says, that's okay, we'll just wait, it's tricky, because what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for the unicorn then to come flying through the door and give us that price that is absolutely going to break every record in the whole area? That is
Yeah.
highly, highly unlikely. The market is brutally honest, and it is super important that as real estate agents and vendors must take on board what the market is saying, because we are not going in and out of every single property. Again, I've got a wonderful property on the market at the moment. It's in an area that we don't see a huge amount of properties come on. It's a little bit further away from the beach, and it's a multi-million-dollar property. But the buyers are comparing that property with other properties that are smaller, that are much, much closer to the beach. We must take on board what the market is saying, and whether a buyer wants to purchase that property or not, they will very happily give you the feedback as to where they feel that property sits in the marketplace. Again, that is the market feedback, and we must take that on board. Now, if we don't actually get to a level that a vendor is happy with, a vendor has some options here. They either can hear the feedback and meet the market where it is at, or they can hold their property and wait for the market to come up.
Yeah, there's no pressure there. No one's being coerced into selling, but it's just realizing that the market and the owner's expectations are not aligned. And I'll give you an example. If we're in a 10% variance on price, that's equivalent to say like a price guide and where the owner's expectations are at the end of the campaign. Within a 5% variance, as an agent, we call that the selling range. That's possible. We can pull deals together at that level. Market either needs to shift a couple of percent, or we get the buyer to shift a couple of percent, and we're almost there. But more than 10%, from our experience over hundreds of transactions, your chance of selling when there's more than a 10% variance is slim. I'll be honest.
Yeah, agreed. And here's the thing, and please consider this if you're a vendor and you're watching this and you're going, I'm hearing all of this because I've been on the market for quite some time, and my agent has been telling me that we've got this, this big 10% variance or more. What are you actually selling for? Because if you are selling to rebuy into the market, it's all the same. When your property goes up, when the market shifts upwards, so does the next property that you are buying. So it is all the same. It's very important. And as real estate agents, ask your vendors, what are you looking to do? Why are you selling? And if it is just to rebuy back into the market, you know, you need to, you want to be buying and selling in the same market. That is the ideal situation. And again, it's all the same, because if you're waiting for your property to shift upwards 10%, it's very likely that the next property that you are buying is also shifting upwards by 10% as well. But here's the reality that most people do not realise. The market does not reward waiting. The market rewards correct pricing.
I think that's closing comments. I've got nothing more to add there.
That's it. That was the king hit. You know, but that's the truth. So, you know, let's just go right back to what we were saying at the beginning of the show here, Billy. It's very unlikely it's the marketing. It's very unlikely it's your bullet points. It's very unlikely it is your photos, although we do look at price, product, promotion. You know, it's very likely that it is the price.
Yeah, and in a digital era, you know, when land owners and sellers have not been on the market for 20 years, it's different now, guys. Like the digital world, you're exposed, your property can be exposed to millions of eyeballs literally within hours. So it's not like putting the signboard up and waiting for a week and then putting it in the newspaper a week later. It's, you know, those days are gone. That's why you need to get the local insight.
Absolutely. And also, just to finish off, Billy, always make sure as an agent you are constantly updating your vendor with what has come onto the market that is comparable, that competes, and what has sold that competes. And it doesn't always have to be in that particular suburb. You know, it could be, these days data is so great, like we can draw down on what are the buyers that are also looking at your property, what else are they actually looking at? We can see that data now. Make sure you're reporting that to your vendors. They are the facts. They are the facts. And often I will sit with my vendor. I love sitting with my vendors and going through things. And I will show them, this is a property that's sold in the next suburb to yours. Here's all the details about that property. Do you feel this property is better or worse than your property? That's a really important exercise to go through.
There's nothing better than feeling like you're an informed consumer. You know what's a good deal. You know, it's like going to the shops. You know what's a good deal because you're educated. And that's the agent's job. You know, that's the agent's job.
I agree. And, you know, look, there are plenty of great agents out there. Of course, we are chosen by vendors to get the absolute best price out of the market. And very often we do, but we're not magicians. We're not magicians, you know, and sometimes there is this big disparity there. So there you go, guys. Hopefully that has helped help people out there. That is a really, really big topic, price. It's probably the biggest conversation we have all day, every day with buyers and sellers. Hopefully that info has helped everyone.
There you go. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks, Billy. See you guys.